Done. Finished. Happy Valentine's Day. That was like 6 weeks ago, man. You want to see how I made it? First I cut 2 pieces of wood, one for the top and one for the back side, and I cut a 45-degree angle on them to join them at the corner. I then proceeded to cut a bunch of strips, and a couple of them I ripped in the middle to make smaller pieces, which I was going to use to make a heart shape, but as you will see, it didn't work out quite as planned. Since this is hardwood, I decided to soak it in water first for 24 or 30 hours, and after that I put them in the steam box. I hadn't tried to steam wood like this before, and since it's a little hard, I wasn't sure if it was gonna work. While the wood was steaming, I made a couple of molds to wrap the wood around. One for the brace and another one to make the heart shape. Now the main problem was that corner that I'm just cutting out now was too tight. The radius was too tight for the wood that I was using to bend it. Now that I cut out the mold and the shape that I wanted, I needed to remove the material of the wood that was going to go between the 2 molds, since I was going to clamp the wood in between these 2 molds that I'm preparing. And this is my simple steaming setup, just a box with boiling water, a hose that connects to a steam box, and as you can see, it's steaming quite nicely. Even though I steamed it more than I would usually would, I had to put quite a lot of force into it in order to get it to bend the way that I wanted it. Using the clamps, I forced it into place. With the first piece it went okay, but with these other pieces, even though they were smaller, the radius was too tight, and I kept getting splinters and breakouts with these pieces. After letting it cool down, I removed the clamps, and this was the final result. This one piece turned out quite alright, the other piece broke, and the smaller pieces for the heart shape, they basically all broke, and I wasn't happy with them, so I took those and threw them in the trash. These 2 I glued up and put them back into the mold. For the heart shape, I went to plan B, which basically meant cutting more strips of wood. sanded them and cut them to length. Using those strips of wood, I made a grid pattern, which I glued up and put in the press. After it dried for a night, I removed it and cut out a heart shape out of a paper I printed, and I used a little spray paint to paint it onto the grid pattern, which left me with a nice heart shape. After cutting the heart out with a jigsaw, this piece was dry and I was able to remove it, and the glue squeeze out I removed using a chisel. I then proceeded to sand the piece and work on the layout. Since there was only this little corner that was touching the bracket, I needed to chisel out some of the wood in order to give it some more contact surface for the glue. And that gives it a nice surface to glue it up later. But first I needed to glue up the top and the side mount of the pieces of wood. I needed to attach the heart somehow to this piece of wood, and I thought it would look nice if I made a chain out of wood as well. And I printed out a template, glued it onto the wood, and since the wood was too thick, I needed to remove the bottom part. I then proceeded to drill a couple of holes into the wood in order to cut it out with the jigsaw. Since the cut with the jigsaw isn't perfect, I use the sander to sand up to the line. And there you go, 3 chain links in order to make a wooden chain. After sanding and shaping the links, I needed to create a hook in order to put this little vase that I bought onto the brace itself. And using my imagination, I drew a little hook onto the wood, which wasn't perfect the first time, so I did it again. Then I proceeded to cut out the little hook and shape it. After I got the basic shape, I glued it to the other piece that was gonna go onto the support brace. Now, even though it was almost perfect with the support brace. I still had a little crack in between, and on this piece there was a couple of little holes as well. So I used a little wood filler to fill the sides and sand it. I then used my Dremel sander to give the hook its final shape. I then needed to remove all the sharp edges, and using my router I rounded over most of the corners, being very careful not to round over where the glue up was going to be. If you made it this far in the video, you probably are interested in wood videos like this. So if you want to see more in the future, please subscribe, and I will bring out more content like this in the future. After I rounded all the corners, I sanded everything one last time. Also glued the hook onto the support brace before I glued that onto the top and back brace. I had to keep working with the chain, and in order to make a chain I had to cut one of the links that I had created and glue it back together with the other ones in order to make a 3-link chain. Now it was time to glue the support brace onto the top and bottom piece. After the chain was dry, I connected it to the heart. Now this probably would have held on its own, but just to make sure, I drilled a couple of holes and put some dowels into them. Which I made from this big toothpick. I also put in a third dowel on the top of this support brace where the chain link was gonna connect to the piece. And this is what it looks like with the 2 dowels. The chain dried onto the heart as well, and I proceeded to drill a hole into the chain link, which was going to connect to the third dowel. Since the dowel was too long, I had to cut it off, and while I was at it, I cut the other two off and sanded them flush. I then glued the chain onto the support brace. I also needed a way to mount it to the wall, and I made a little hanger in the back with a washer. After that, all that needed to be done was finish it, and I used some oil that I rubbed onto the piece in order to finish the whole thing. Unfortunately, this piece was too late for Valentine's Day for my wife, but she still loved it. So, for all you husbands out there, get your wife a Valentine's Day present in March or April. It would sure be surprising to her.